Hello, and welcome back to the Gardner Show.
The Gardner Show! 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 The Gardner Show!
I'm your host, Mike Gardner. I'm a novelist, a lifelong lover of stories, and whether you're here for the first time or you've been with me since episode 1, welcome back to the campfire. Behind every story is a deeper question, and today's question is one I've been thinking about for a long time. So pull up your chair and let's begin at the very beginning. Imagine for a moment you're just an ordinary person living an ordinary life. Maybe you're worried about going to school. Maybe you're worried about paying bills. Maybe you're worried about asking that cute girl at the grocery store out. God knows I am. Then one day, a mysterious old man shows up, and he tells you that you are the chosen one. You are destined to defeat the Dark Lord. You are the only person who can save the kingdom. The fate of the world rests on your shoulders. Congratulations! Well, that sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? No, maybe not. Think about it. What if you don't want the responsibility? What if you're not ready for the responsibility? What if you're terrified? What if you're not even qualified? And most of all, what if the prophecy got it wrong? For decades, the Chosen One has been one of the most popular tropes in fiction, from ancient myths to modern fantasy novels. We love stories about ordinary people who discover they have an extraordinary destiny. But I've always found myself asking a different question. What if the Chosen One was actually a curse? Today we're going to talk about the Chosen One trope, where it comes from, why it works when it's done well, and why so many writers are beginning to push back against it entirely. Because behind every Chosen One story is a deeper question. Do heroes become great because destiny has chosen them? Or do they become great because of the choices they make? The Chosen One is much older than most people realize. If you thought it started with Luke Skywalker, Neo, or even Harry Potter, you're gravely mistaken. It doesn't even start with King Arthur. Go back to ancient Egypt. Pharaoh wasn't just king. He was chosen by the gods to be a god, a divine intermediary between heaven and the people. The concept of divine kingship, the idea that a ruler is specifically selected and empowered by gods, appears in nearly every ancient civilization on Earth, from ancient Egypt to Mesopotamia to the Inca Empire. The Egyptians were particularly explicit about this, however. Pharaohs were understood not merely to be a representative of the gods, but an incarnation of Horus, the falcon-headed deity on Earth. Their very existence was cosmic principle. Without them, the Nile would flood, crops would not grow, and the order of the universe, what Egyptians called Mat-Tat, would collapse entirely. The Chosen One mythology on a civilizational scale. Then there's Moses. The biblical account has Moses being chosen by God himself, an ordinary man, a shepherd, a fugitive with a speech impediment, called to lead an enslaved people to freedom. He doesn't want the job. He argues with God about it. He asks God to send someone else, anyone else, and God essentially says no. You are the one. That reluctance, by the way, is important. We'll come back to it. In the Book of Mormon, Nephi is chosen by God to lead his family to the Americas, a land of promise. In the face of danger, family conflict, and tremendous uncertainty, again, an ordinary person, extraordinary calling, world-altering consequences. Let's move to the Greeks, and the pattern continues, but with a twist. Heroes like Perseus, Hercules, and Theseus aren't just called, they are born different. Divine ancestry, prophetic destinies, extraordinary abilities that separate them from everyone around them before the story begins. Perseus is the son of Zeus. Hercules is superhuman strength from birth. Theseus is destined to become the king of Athens. The universe didn't just choose them, the universe built them for the purpose. Then we arrive to medieval archetype, and the most well-known, which I've already mentioned, is King Arthur. Arthur doesn't just become king, he is chosen by the Lady of the Lake Galadriel to receive Excalibur. Or, depending on which version you're reading, he simply pulls the sword from a stone that no one else on earth could move. And in that single moment, the entire kingdom recognizes him as the unremarkable young man who did something different. The message across all of these stories is the same. Remarkably consistent. Ordinary rules don't apply to this person. The universe itself singled them out. Now here's something interesting. The chosen one doesn't just appear in Western myth. In Hindu mythology, the god Krishna is born of the eighth son of Devaki, fulfilling the prophecy that the eighth child will be the destroyer of the tyrant Kanasa. But Krishna isn't just destined to fulfill this prophecy. He's an avatar, a direct incarnation of Vishnu, the supreme being himself. The prophecy doesn't describe what makes Krishna special. The prophecy describes what Krishna already is. In Japanese mythology, Emperor is understood to be the direct descendant of Amaterasu, the sun goddess. Again, the chosen one isn't simply someone who is called by destiny. They are someone who is destiny, by blood, by cosmic order. In the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, chosenness isn't limited to ancient prophets. The scriptures teach us that individuals are known by God before they are born, and are called to specific purposes according to his wisdom. Prophets such as Moses, Jeremiah, and Joseph Smith are portrayed as people who are prepared for sacred responsibility long before moments that would define their lives. But what makes these figures remarkable isn't that they become perfect overnight. It's that ordinary men and women are invited to participate in extraordinary work. In this tradition, being chosen isn't about personal greatness. It's about God's willingness to work through imperfect people to accomplish a greater purpose. It's a way of saying transcendence has entered an ordinary world. The chosen one is the point where divinity, destiny, and humanity intersect. But there's the question that's been burning through human consciousness for thousands of years. If they're chosen to carry something transcendent, who gets to choose? And what does that choice cost you? The idea really exploded into modern fiction through an extraordinarily influential figure, J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, interestingly enough, Frodo Baggins isn't a traditional chosen one. Nobody prophesied his arrival. Nobody revealed that he alone could carry the ring. But Tolkien established, perhaps more powerfully than anyone before him, was the pattern of the reluctance of an ordinary person being called into extraordinary destiny with no guarantee of survival. The template spread. By the time George Lucas created Star Wars in 1977, the chosen one was ready-made for a new mythology. Luke Skywalker literally was the last hope. Then the prequels went one further. Anakin Skywalker is prophesied to bring balance to the Force. When it came to Harry Potter in 1997, he was the boy who lived, marked by a destiny before he could walk. Neo in the Matrix was told by an oracle that he is the one. Then Rand al'Thor and Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, The Dragon Reborn, prophesied for thousands of years. Paul Atreides, the Kwisatz Haderach, a super being his people had been waiting for. By the 90s and early 2000s, Chosen Ones was everywhere. Fantasy shelves were packed with prophecies, ancient swords, glowing birthmarks, and orphaned farm boys who were secretly designed to save everything. And that's where the question started to emerge. If the hero succeeds because he was destined to, are there real heroes, or are they just puppets following a script? I would like to talk about something that often gets overlooked in Chosen One stories. Being chosen is traumatic. Think about it from a psychological perspective. You're going about your life. You have some sense of who you are, some hopes, some plans, and maybe a sense of normalcy. And then someone, a mysterious old man, a ghost, an oracle, a magical letter, comes and they tell you everything you thought you knew about yourself is wrong. You are not who you think you are. You have a destiny you never asked for. And that destiny probably involves sacrifice and most likely death. Developmental psychologist Erik Erikson described adolescence as a period of identity formation, a time when young people develop a sense of who they are, they test boundaries, and determine who they're going to become. What happens if during this critical period you are told, no, you don't get to decide who you are chosen, the identity is predetermined, and you are the chosen one? That's not development. That's annihilation of oneself. Look at Anakin Skywalker. Anakin spends the prequel trilogy believing that he is the chosen one. Everyone around him reinforces it. The Jedi Council believes it. Padme believes it. His mother believes it. But Anakin himself is terrified. He is desperate to prevent the prophecy that he does not understand. He is haunted by visions, and eventually he becomes fractured by the pressure of being chosen. That becomes the opposite of who he was prophesied to be. He chooses to become Darth Vader, not because destiny forces him, but because the pressure of being chosen warped him so completely that he'd rather lose everything than continue bearing the burden. That's psychological realism of the Chosen One story. Then there's Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling does something subtle with Harry that is worth noting. Harry doesn't know he's the chosen one for most of his childhood. He grows up as an ordinary boy without the weight of destiny. Not until he enters the wizarding world does the prophecy chase him down. And notice what it does to him. He becomes isolated, haunted, marked. The prophecy doesn't save him. It endangers him. The prophecy is the thing trying to kill him, and it eventually does. By the time Harry reaches adulthood, he understands something fundamental. Destiny is a burden. Being chosen is a wound. And survival means that you have to learn to carry it. Not because you're special, but because nobody else will. That's what separates great chosen one stories from mediocre ones. Great ones make us feel the cost. Contemporary writers have been asking some uncomfortable questions about this trope. What if the prophecy was wrong? What if the chosen one fails? What if there are multiple chosen ones? What if being chosen ruins someone's life? What if anyone could have become a hero and the prophecy just so happened to land on this particular person? I think we should start with Dune. Frank Herbert published Dune in 1965, but it reads as though it's written in response to every chosen one story that came after it. Paul Atreides appears to have been a messianic figure his people have been waiting for. But Herbert makes us know something very crucial. The prophecy surrounding Paul Atreides wasn't divine revelation. It was manufactured. An organization called the Bene Gesserit had deliberately planted messianic legends on planets for generation as a tool of manipulation and control. The chosen hero, in part, is a product of sophisticated religious propaganda. But here's where things get darker. Paul becomes the chosen one anyway, not because the prophecy was real, but because he's ruthless enough and charismatic enough to make everyone believe it. He deliberately manipulates his own mythology to gain power. And by the end of the novel, Paul becomes a tyrant who can't escape his own legend. The prophecy was fake, but the chosen one becomes real. But at what cost? I would argue his own humanity. Then there's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is one where the creator, Joss Whedon, spent 7 seasons systematically dismantling the chosen one archetype. Prophecies are incomplete. They are misread. They are exploited by people to gain power. And in this series, the finale, Buffy essentially breaks the system by sharing her power with every potential slayer on Earth, rejecting the idea that destiny should fall on one person entirely. That isn't fulfillment of the prophecy. It's a revolution against the concept of the prophecy itself. And then there's the most powerful subversion in popular culture. Yes, we're back to Star Wars. Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is literally believed by the Jedi Order to be the Chosen One. Prophesied being who will bring balance to the Force. And he fails catastrophically. He becomes Darth Vader. He becomes the very thing he was supposed to destroy. Yes, we all know that line. George Lucas isn't telling a Chosen One story. He's telling a cautionary tale about Chosen One stories. About what happens when the weight of destiny is placed on someone who can't and isn't ready to carry it. About the prophecy costs and what it costs that person who is supposed to fulfill it. That is a much more interesting question. So why does the Chosen One keep showing up? Even now, even in a storytelling culture that's grown skeptical of it. I think it's because the trope is doing something deeper than just telling us a story about hero. Psychologist Carl Jung spends decades studying what's called archetypes of universal patterns that appear in stories, myths and dreams, and cultures across time and geography. The hero, the ways of the wise old man, the shadow, the threshold, the guardian, these are patterns because they spark something fundamental about human psyche. Jung argued that the hero archetype specifically represents the part of us that must face the unknown, overcome challenges, and integrate the shadows, the rejected or destined parts of ourselves, in a more complex identity. The Chosen One taps into one of the deepest needs, the need to believe that our lives matter, that we are put on this earth for a reason, that the things that we go through, the suffering, the loss, the struggles, are part of something larger, more than random chance. We project those needs onto heroes. And here's the thing. Whether you come at this from a psychological angle, skeptical, whatever, or a theological one, the underlying question remains the same. Am I here for a reason? Theologian N.T. Wright, in his work, Vocation and the Calling, argues that Christian tradition has always understood that ordinary people as being called to a particular purpose, not because they are extraordinary, but precisely because they are ordinary, and therefore the transformation is unmistakably not their own doing. The reluctant hero, Moses, Jonah, Frodo, even Luke Skywalker in the early moments, work because it mirrors something we recognize about real calling. Nobody feels ready, nobody feels qualified. The question isn't whether the feeling is chosen, the question is what you do when the call arrives. Let me be very specific about something. There is a difference between being chosen and choosing to act. The best Chosen One stories exploit that tension. Hero's journey theorist Joseph Campbell spent most of his life studying the patterns in mythology, how heroes are called, what trials they face, and how they transform. Campbell identified a crucial moment he called the refusal of the call. This is the hero, the chosen one, and they tell you they don't want it. They try to refuse. Only after refusing does the journey begin. The refusal is important because that's the moment the chosen one becomes the choosing hero. Let me give you some examples of how this plays out. Harry Potter works at its best, not because Harry doesn't feel chosen, but because he's haunted. The prophecy marks him for death, not glory. He survives not because of destiny, not because it protects him, but because of love, friendship, sacrifice, and the series of choices made under impossible pressures. The prophecy isn't the premise of the story, but the choices are the story itself. Rand al'Thul in The Wheel of Time works because the prophecy is slowly destroying him. The weight of being the dragon reborn warps his mind, isolates him, and forces him to make decisions that cost him everything. Robert Jordan understood something crucial. The more real the prophecy feels, the more it corrupts the hero. Even Luke Skywalker, the archetypal 1970s chosen one, doesn't simply accept his destiny. He's reluctant. He's afraid. He only becomes the hero because he chooses to repeatedly across 3 films, not because the Force simply carries him to it. Compare this to a failure mode. The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini gave us Aragon, the farm boy who discovers he's the last dragon rider and the prophesied savior of his world. But notice what happens. Aragon succeeds almost entirely because he's chosen. The story progresses through mythological training, inherited power, and destiny fulfillment, and the result, a complete fantasy epic that most people have forgotten. Why? Because Aragon's victories don't cost him anything real. His heroism is handed to him. The prophecy does the work. The Chosen One fails when the hero's identity as the Chosen One does the work. When the story is essentially says this person will win because they were born that way, because the universe owes them victory. That's not a story. That's a press release. The question isn't whether the hero is chosen. The question is, what does being chosen cost? I want to talk about what happens when the Chosen One fails to fulfill the prophecy. This is territory where modern storytelling gets interesting. In King Jemisin's Broken Earth trilogy, Ezzy is a woman with incredible power. She can break the world. And a lot of people throughout history have believed that she was chosen by fate to do just that. But Ezzy is traumatized. She's been enslaved, abused, tortured into her power. Jasmine's point is devastating. Maybe the prophecy isn't destiny. Maybe it's just someone's description of traumatized person being forced into what trauma made them capable of doing. That's not a prophecy. That's a description of abuse. Then there's Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series, where the Chosen One is prophesied hero who is supposed to save the world from darkness. Doesn't work out the way anyone expects it. The prophecy is misread, the wrong person was chosen, the chosen hero fails, and someone else, someone who was never chosen, never prophesied, has to step in and actually save everyone. What Sanderson is doing is asking the question that more writers should ask. What if the prophecy was about someone and the person doesn't show up? There's a concept in literary theory called the false chosen one, where the prophecy seems to point to one person, but that person either refuses the call, fails in the attempt, or is revealed to have been misinterpreted in the original text. And that creates a narrative tension that's pure destiny can never create. Because the chosen one is guaranteed to win, there is no conflict, there is no stakes, there is no reason for me to care whether they fail or succeed. But the chosen one is supposed to win, and they don't. Now we have a story. All right, Writer's Corner. I might go off script here because I've been working on something new. But we're going to start with the script. I want to talk about my own relationship with the Chosen One because it is complicated. I am currently working on getting my novel Anrith, the Tale of a Bear and His Guns published. And looking back at it now, I realize the main character, Bear, is almost deliberate rejection of the Chosen One archetype. For those of you who don't know, which is hopefully most of my listeners, Anrith is the tale of a teddy bear who comes to life, wins the girl of his dreams because he's a teddy bear and she's a 6-year-old girl. They grow old together. She dies horribly of cancer, and he gets transported into another reality out of grief and pain, and becomes the sheriff of a steampunk world. And that's the premise of Anrith. And the thing is, nobody pulls Bear aside and hands him the prophecy. Nobody reveals it to him. Nobody tells him that he's the heir of the kingdom. Nobody tells him that he's destined for greatness. The universe doesn't single him out. Nobody is watching to see if he fulfills the purpose. Bear keeps becoming the hero because he chooses to help people again and again and again. even when he could walk away, even when it's easier to walk away, he chooses not to. That's almost the exact opposite of the Chosen One story. The world doesn't choose Bear, Bear chooses the world. And there is actually why I think this character works, because the heroism is earned with every single decision not handed to him by a prophecy at the beginning of the book. What I've learned writing Bear is this: you don't have to be the chosen one. You do have to be the good guy. You don't even have to be the source of conflict. Sometimes you just have to be in the right place at the right time and decide to step up. Like I said, you got to choose to be the good guy. I've also been working on a character dynamics in Gods, Aliens, and Onion Rings. This one I am looking for a publisher right now. So if you know anyone, email me and I'll send you a manuscript. My protagonist is told that he has a destiny. He is told that he's the one who can defeat this particular evil, and his response isn't awe and wonder, it's exhaustion. He knows what it means to carry that kind of weight. He has already paid the price of being chosen in the past, and when the prophecy shows up again, what he has to do is choose anyway. Not because destiny forces him, but because nobody else will. The choice, the moment, is the moment where a prophesied hero decides to act because the prophecy demands it, but because their own circumstances demand it. That's where the real heroism comes in. And I think I'm writing, and this is where I'm going off script. I'm writing a story right now, and I have a very serious dilemma of choosing, do I want to make him the standard chosen one? I mean, he's already different. He's a half orc, half human, and his whole town that he grows up in definitely sees him as something special. They see him as a chosen one, and he doesn't want to be the chosen one. And right now, he's being handed this weapon that is, proof that he's the chosen one. That he's the son of the orc god, and the elf princess, and he is chosen to be these heroes. And my honest thought process is, what can I do to make it look like he's the chosen one, but he's not? Because it's much more interesting story to go from you are who we say you are and have them say, no, I am who I say I am. And so that's what I'm working through right now. I was working on it earlier today. That's just what I'm working through right now. Here's what I think the Chosen One trope is really about. Underneath all of the ancient swords, glowing birthmarks, and mysterious old men and cryptic warnings, the Chosen One is interesting because they're not chosen, not because they're chosen. It's interesting because of what they do after they are chosen. Because deep down, we don't actually want to read about destiny. We want to read about decision and choice. We want to believe that the hero could have walked away, and he chose not to. The ancient stories told us that heroes were made by gods. The modern stories tell us something different. Maybe heroes aren't born. Maybe they're chosen. Maybe heroism is the choice to simply stand up when everyone else sits down. And if that's true, then perhaps the greatest thing that Chosen One story has ever taught us, across 50 centuries of telling stories and retelling them, we are never waiting for a hero to arrive. We were always being invited to become one. And I'll leave you with the quote from J.R.R. Tolkien from The Fellowship of the Ring. Great book if you haven't read it, by the way, but it's Frodo and Gandalf are talking, and Frodo says, "I wish it need not happen in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all of those who see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what we do with the time given us." All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. I hope my story this week didn't bore you. Thanks for pulling up a chair around my campfire. Keep questioning, keep telling stories, and I'll see you next time on the Gardner Show. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about the Gardner Show, please email me at m.gardnerbooks@gmail.com.